Welcome back to our channel, soap fans. Today is a beautiful, dramatic day to dive into the most explosive, jaw-dropping chaos Los Angeles has ever seen. We have a massive, game-changing breakdown of what is coming next on The Bold and the Beautiful, and trust us, you are not ready for this level of high-stakes fallout. Let's get straight into the madness. Blood on the Forrester floor. Sirens wailing in the distance. A beloved patriarch lying unconscious, and a young man's entire future about to be locked away behind cold steel bars. The simmering Spencer and Forrester war has just detonated into a lethal criminal investigation, and absolutely no one is walking away from this wreckage clean. The battle lines have been drawn, the lawyers have been called, and the handcuffs are coming out. The nightmare begins with a sickening, bone-chilling thud that will echo through the halls of Forrester Creations forever. Will Spencer and R.J. Forrester's bitter, toxic rivalry has finally crossed the point of no return. We are talking about a full-blown, violent, catastrophic physical brawl. The tension that has been building over Electra Forrester finally snaps in a moment of sheer, unadulterated feral rage. R.J., with his smug, entitled smirks and relentless, calculated instigation, pushes Will right over the edge. Will loses all control. He swings, the chaos erupts, and the two young men tear into each other like wild animals. But the true tragedy strikes when Eric Forrester attempts to intervene. The beloved Forrester patriarch steps into the crossfire to stop the bloodshed, but the momentum of the violent struggle sends him crashing to the ground. Eric's head strikes the hard floor with a horrifying crack. He is instantly knocked out cold, completely unresponsive, bleeding, and fighting for his life. The room freezes. The air is sucked out of the building. Will stares at his trembling hands in absolute, paralyzing horror, realizing the catastrophic magnitude of what he has just done. Enter Ridge Forrester, completely unhinged and operating on pure, murderous adrenaline. Ridge drops to his knees beside his unconscious father, screaming for an ambulance, his eyes burning with a level of vengeance we have never seen before. Ridge is not just angry, he is out for blood. He points a shaking, furious finger directly at Will's chest and unleashes a verbal assault that shakes the very foundation of the building. Ridge brands Will a rabid dog, a violent psychopath, and a dangerous Spencer monster who needs to be locked in a cage. Ridge does not care about apologies. He does not care about accidents. He immediately grabs his phone and demands the police arrive on the scene with their sirens blaring. Ridge is pressing maximum criminal charges. He wants Will arrested for assault, battery, and reckless endangerment. He wants the Spencer heir handcuffed, fingerprinted, thrown into a holding cell, and stripped of his entire future. Ridge vows right then and there that Will is going to rot in a maximum security prison for daring to lay a hand on his family. The wrath of the Forrester family has been fully unleashed, and Ridge is leading the charge with a merciless, unforgiving demand for absolute justice. But if Ridge Forrester thinks he can just throw a Spencer to the wolves, he has severely underestimated the terrifying power of Dollar Bill Spencer. The moment Bill gets the frantic phone call about his son facing imminent arrest, the temperature in Los Angeles drops to freezing. Bill Spencer shifts instantly from a corporate titan into a ruthless, desperate, protective father willing to burn the entire city to the ground. Bill activates his elite strike force of high-powered, cutthroat defense attorneys. He is deploying every single ounce of his massive wealth, his media influence, and his terrifying underworld connections to build an impenetrable fortress around Will. Bill storms onto the scene like a one-man apocalypse, getting directly into Ridge's face. The two billionaires clash in a screaming match that threatens to shatter the windows. Bill warns Ridge that if he dares to push these criminal charges, Spencer Publications will launch a smear campaign so devastating it will bankrupt Forrester Creations and destroy the Forrester legacy forever. Bill makes it crystal clear, no police officer is putting handcuffs on his son. He will buy the judges, he will buy the prosecutors, and he will destroy anyone who stands in Will's way. The legal war of the century has officially begun, and it is going to be a bloodbath of epic proportions. While the billionaires threaten each other with total annihilation, a far more insidious and toxic game is being played in the shadows. Enter R.J. Forrester, the master manipulator. R.J. is battered, bruised, and nursing his injuries, but behind his pained grimaces lies a brilliant, calculating mind. RJ knows exactly how to weaponize this horrific tragedy. He plays the victim role to absolute perfection. When Elektra rushes to his side, her eyes wide with terror and concern, RJ milks every single ounce of sympathy he can extract. He winces in perfect timing. He whispers with a trembling voice about how terrified he was. Howell just snapped into a violent, uncontrollable rage without warning. RJ paints a horrifying picture of Will as an unstable, dangerous brute who cannot control his primal urges. He completely omits his own relentless instigation and focuses entirely on Will's explosive violence. And his manipulative masterpiece works flawlessly. Elektra hangs onto his every word, her heart breaking for the injured RJ, while her feelings for Will curdle into pure, unadulterated disgust. RJ has successfully used his grandfather's tragic injury to secure his ultimate victory in the battle for Elektra's heart. Elektra's reaction is absolutely devastating. She is thoroughly, completely repulsed by the violence she has witnessed. When Will desperately tries to explain himself, to plead that it was an accident, that RJ pushed him, Elektra shuts him down with a cold, unforgiving stare that cuts deeper than any knife. She looks at Will not as the man she loved, but as a terrifying stranger. She calls him a monster. She tells him that his uncontrollable anger is toxic and dangerous, and she refuses to let that kind of darkness into her life. Elektra's rejection is absolute and final. She turns her back on Will, choosing to stand firmly by RJ's side, comforting the so-called victim while leaving Will to drown in his own catastrophic mistakes. The romantic war is over, and Will has lost everything in the blink of an eye. The humiliation does not end there. Will is subjected to the ultimate disgrace, a formal, aggressive banishment from the Forrester estate. With Eric's life hanging in the balance and Ridge on a warpath, the security guards are called. Will is escorted off the property like a common criminal. He is told in no uncertain terms that if he ever steps foot near the Forrester family again, he will be arrested for trespassing. Stripped of his dignity, his girlfriend, and his reputation, Will retreats into the dark, neon-lit corners of the bikini bar. He is a broken, shattered man. He sits alone in the shadows, nursing a stiff drink, suffocating under the weight of his own humiliation and the terrifying reality of his impending legal nightmare. He is completely isolated. When Melissa Dillon and the other women at the bar attempt to swarm him, trying to cheer him up and insert themselves into his vulnerable orbit, Will snaps. He aggressively pushes them away, demanding to be left alone in his misery. The Spencer heir has never been more defeated, more alone, or more desperate in his entire life. The walls are closing in, the police are circling, and Will is drowning in a sea of his own violent consequences. But the explosive Forrester and Spencer war is not the only tragedy striking Los Angeles. Prepare yourselves for a completely devastating, heartbreaking emotional collapse that will leave you in tears. We are shifting gears to Daphne Rose and Carter Walton, whose newlywed bliss is about to be violently shattered by a cruel twist of medical fate. Daphne has been secretly dealing with terrifying symptoms, praying it was just stress, but the truth is about to hit her like a freight train. Daphne sits in the cold, sterile office of Dr. Lee Finnegan, her hands trembling as she waits for her test results. The tension in the room is suffocating. Dr. Lee walks in, her face etched with deep, clinical sympathy, and delivers a diagnosis that stops Daphne's heart from beating. Early menopause. Complete and irreversible infertility. The words drop into the quiet room like heavy lead weights. Daphne cannot conceive. She will never be able to carry a child. The psychological devastation is instantaneous and absolute. Daphne's entire world collapses in on itself. The ringing in her ears drowns out the rest of Dr. Lee's medical explanations. Daphne feels an overwhelming, suffocating wave of failure crash over her. She feels like her own body has violently betrayed her. She feels like a failure as a woman, a failure as a wife, and a broken, defective human being. The grief paralyzes her. She cannot breathe. She cannot speak. She just stares blankly at the wall, her soul shattering into a million irreparable pieces. She knows how desperately Carter wants a family. She knows how his eyes light up when he talks about nurseries, baby names, and their future children. The thought of walking through her front door and destroying her husband's greatest dream is a burden too agonizing to bear. Daphne retreats into a dark, impenetrable shell of silence and distance. She avoids Carter like the plague. When she comes home, she cannot look him in the eye. She flinches when he touches her. She locks herself in the bathroom, staring at her reflection with pure self-hatred, sobbing silently into a towel so he will not hear her pain. Carter, completely oblivious to the medical tragedy, is full of vibrant hope and excitement for their future. He lights candles, cooks romantic dinners, and talks enthusiastically about their plans to start a family. Every loving word he speaks feels like a dagger twisting in Daphne's heart. The dramatic irony is agonizing to watch. Daphne's suffocating silence and sudden, frigid distance begin to take a massive toll on their marriage. The tension in their home becomes thick enough to cut with a knife. Carter is not a fool. He senses the massive shift in his wife's behavior. The distance, the coldness, the constant avoidance, it all triggers a deep, frantic suspicion in Carter's mind. He starts to panic. He wonders if she is having second thoughts about their marriage. He wonders if there is someone else. He wonders if he did something wrong to push her away. The paranoia eats at him, pushing their newlywed marriage to the absolute breaking point. The unspoken tension finally snaps in a massive, explosive confrontation in their living room. Carter demands answers. He begs her to tell him what is wrong, raising his voice, his own heartbreak and confusion spilling over. He corners her, refusing to let her run away and hide in the bedroom again. He demands the truth, no matter how much it hurts. And then, the dam breaks. Daphne completely collapses. Her knees give out, and she falls to the floor in a puddle of agonizing, hysterical tears. The secret is ripped from her chest in a raw, screaming confession of pure heartbreak. She tells him everything. She tells him about Dr. Lee. She tells him about the early menopause. She screams that she is infertile, that she is broken, that she can never give him the child he so desperately desires. The raw, unfiltered pain in her voice is enough to shatter the hardest of hearts. She confesses her deep, dark feelings of inadequacy, sobbing that she has failed him as a wife. Carter's reaction is immediate and fiercely protective. He drops to the floor beside her, wrapping his arms around her shaking body, refusing to let her go. He tells her that he loves her, that her medical diagnosis does not change his devotion, and that they will face this nightmare together. Carter, ever the pragmatic problem solver, immediately tries to pivot to solutions. He wipes her tears and softly suggests that they have other options. He talks about the miracle of surrogacy. He talks about the beauty of adoption. He tries to paint a picture of a different path to parenthood, desperately trying to inject hope into the darkest moment of their lives. He assures her that a biological connection is not the only way to build a loving family, and that they can still have the beautiful life they dreamed of. But Carter's desperate attempts to fix the situation completely backfire. Daphne is entirely consumed by her trauma. She rejects his comfort. She rejects his solutions. She shakes her head violently, pushing him away with a tragic, heartbreaking vulnerability. She spirals into a severe, terrifying clinical depression. In her traumatized mind, surrogacy and adoption are just constant, agonizing reminders of her own biological failure. She looks at Carter, a successful, handsome, loving man who deserves the world, and she genuinely believes she is an anchor dragging him down. She tells him, with a dead, hollow voice, that he deserves a more perfect wife. She tells him he deserves a woman who is whole, a woman who can naturally give him the family he wants without medical interventions and borrowed wombs. Daphne's deep depression turns her into her own worst enemy. She begins to actively sabotage her marriage, believing she is performing an act of mercy by pushing Carter away. She tells him to leave her, to find someone better, someone unbroken. This ultimate test of their love pushes Carter to his absolute limits. He is fighting a war on two fronts, battling his own grief over the biological children he will never have, while simultaneously fighting tooth and nail to pull his wife back from the edge of a psychological abyss. Daphne is more vulnerable than she has ever been, completely lost in the darkness of her own mind, and their marriage is hanging by a single, fraying thread. Will Carter's unconditional love be enough to save Daphne from her own self-destruction, or will this devastating medical tragedy be the final nail in the coffin of their romance? The stakes have never been higher. A billionaire war over criminal charges, a violent banishment, a manipulative seduction, and a marriage shattering under the weight of a devastating medical diagnosis. Every single character is being pushed to their absolute breaking point, and the fallout is going to change the landscape of Los Angeles forever. Will Bill Spencer's ruthless tactics save Will from a prison cell, or will Ridge get his ultimate revenge? Share your theories below and subscribe.